who is with Blake Communications and is going to be facilitating and running tonight's meeting, and has done a tremendous amount of work on the back end to organize us and our thoughts. And so thank you, Stephanie, for being here. And Tony, who's running around right now, is with the Cherokee Arts Festival, who donated the space for us to have this meeting in tonight. So thanks, Tony, wherever you are. And he'll be part of the meeting. So my name is Ginger White. I work for the City of Denver, Arts and Venues Denver. And just to give you a brief recap of last month, or the meeting we had November 14th, I was originally approached by Kathy Bacon and Mona Lassaro about this question of how can we help to coalesce Denver's fashion community and support the many great things that are happening, but sort of from more of a unified voice and perspective. And I want to thank them for going that route and asking the question, and for the hard work that they've done and helping to pull this together. And so thank you guys both, because if it weren't for them, this conversation wouldn't have even started. So I think it's exciting. The meeting that we had on November 14th was really our first of several exploratory meetings, because we're still in the exploratory phase. But what we wanted to ask was, is there an appetite from the community, from the various parts of the fashion community, to think about how we might best come together to serve the community, the fashion community, and what that would look like? You know, is this just a Denver thing? Is this a Front Range thing? Is this a statewide thing? Is this an association? Is it a commission that sits within the mayor's office? And so we kind of had a really interesting dialogue at that meeting, but it was obvious that we needed to continue the exploratory phase and reach out more broadly than what we had who attended that first meeting. So we have since conducted a survey, and Stephanie will talk about that, and the results of that survey and what we learned from the community. And so tonight's meeting is really to dig a little bit deeper and to talk about the results of that survey and what the implications may be that we learned from that, and then also to think about, again, what an association may look like. We also invited members of Denver Design Incubator and Fashion Group International and Red Drinks, because it came so that we have a chance to hear what those organizations do, to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. Fashion Denver also, make sure we're not duplicating efforts, and that this is a coordinated and inclusive activity and exploratory process. So, so I'm just going to sit back and listen. Stephanie is going to do a great job of running the meeting. We'll be taking notes, and you have an agenda in front of you, so you kind of know where we're going.
So much volunteer here. I'm kind of in awe of all the creative brilliance that is in this room. So it's pretty cool that everybody came tonight to give your input about what we have going on. So Ginger gave some background to the meetings. I just wanted to make sure that Kathy and Mona, do you have anything you want to add about the last meeting we had in November, or anything about how this came about before we get started for people who may not have been at the first meeting?
I guess the only thing I would say is that we were really happy to see the turnout last meeting, and we had probably about the same amount of people. We do have some repeat people and some new people, but my impression at that time was also, wow, look at these amazing people who are really interested in doing this. And so I don't want to drop this if we can help it. And what we're looking for, and we've Kathy and Ginger and Stephanie. Stephanie and I have all been kind of talking on the phone a few times, and one of the things that's come up is there really enough interest numbers-wise? And my answer to that was, if there's just a few people who are interested and are really strongly committed to this, then the other people will follow. And so I think one of the things we want to come out of this is to have a few other people who are really strongly interested and who really want to help start becoming a part of this. This isn't just for me or Kathy, who just started this to run this. This isn't this isn't what we want to do. The main thing we want to focus on is bringing us all together and creating a better fashion community. We obviously have a lot of talented people here, but for us to come together and actually show the community the quality and consistent quality is, I think, one of the big goals. So,
Thanks, Mona.
I say ditto to whatever you said, because really, it's about the designers, in my opinion. So.
Okay, great. Great. And just so, in case you all didn't come up on your way, there was a sign-up sheet up there. So is it going around? Okay, great. So make sure you sign up, and then there should be a spot to the far right of that sign-up sheet for you to indicate if you want to get more involved beyond just coming to the regular meetings. And that's okay, too, if you just want to show up to the meetings. That's great. But if you do want to have more involvement, you can indicate that, and then someone will reach out to you, probably Kathy or Mona or someone, to figure out how you can get more involved in helping out. Okay, so I'm just going to turn to the survey results now, and then after we do that, I'll have the representatives from the different organizations who, thank you for coming tonight, are here to kind of give us an overview of those organizations. So I won't embarrass people and ask how many of you actually took the survey that was put up online, but there was a survey that was put up, and we ended up having 39 people who responded to it by the deadline of January 2nd. That's obviously a small portion of the people we're talking about within the industry. Some of you may not have even known about the survey. I think with the holidays, that was a little bit tricky. Obviously, we also are doing this pretty organically in terms of how we're getting word out. So it was on Facebook, that kind of thing. So we can talk as we move on about whether or not there's a need to get more diverse representation from the industry, but at least this is a good start, I think, to give us some idea of what people's opinions are about what's going on and whether there's a need and what kind of a need for a fashion association. So you all should have on your seats copies of these slides, so you can kind of follow along here with me. And I apologize, these aren't like the flashiest slides on the planet, but hopefully we'll get the job done here. So this was for those of you who took it, you know, it was a very short 9-question survey, very general. The point was to determine the level of interest and engagement in a fashion association and really explore what that focus would be. And as I mentioned, the deadline was January 2nd. We started administering it around the probably 12th of December. So we had 39 respondents as of January 2nd. If some of you took it after then, I apologize, it's not included in this information. So again, I'm just going to go over very general elements of the survey. If you have specific questions, we can talk about that when we get to the discussion portion of it. But the majority of people who took the survey did say yes, in fact, the industry would benefit from an association at 77% of people. 20% weren't sure, and only 3% said a definitive no. So of that, we also asked for comments from people, and I kind of broke those down into benefits versus concerns of about having an association. I should also say that when asked if people were members of another association that was related to fashion or design in Denver, we had 74% of people say no. So that, I think, is important to consider when you have 74% saying no and 77% saying that there's an association needed. You can read through these benefits, but as you can see, some of them are things that we talked about at the first meeting, things that you guys already know exist, that there's a need for in terms of streamlining, centralizing, a focus on making the fashion industry and different designers have a model for economic sustainability. That was a big thing that came out of a lot of the comments that were made. Increased visibility of the industry and awareness about all the great things that you all are doing and how you're working together. And really, going back to what everyone has kind of said, the point of this is to really bring people together and to be collaborative. And I think that point came out of the survey as well. There didn't seem to be a lot of concerns, but there were concerns that people brought up. One of them was this idea that there are several other organizations. So along with that concern comes the need to differentiate if there is going to be another association. And then also a couple of people, or at least a handful of people, commented on something that had to do with, avoiding personal, political, social agendas. And that again goes back to the piece of really making this collaborative and trying to involve as many voices as possible in as many different areas as possible. Any questions about that before I move on? I'm going to go over these pretty quickly so we have time to let you guys talk more. Okay, membership dues, always the question. If you're going to have an association, how are you going to fund it? So the question was asked for the amount that people would pay in membership dues. And as you can see, the majority of people fell under $100. So we're looking at, most people said less than $50, so anywhere from $50 to $100. We had a couple outliers out there who were willing to pay a little bit more for dues. So then, part of what we asked was, what do you expect from those dues? So if you were paying $50, what do you expect for $50? If you're paying $250, what do you expect for $250? The top 3 things that really came out of that in terms of what benefits people expected: a source for generating business, opportunities for networking, and a source to increase awareness about the fashion industry and about local designers. So we're looking at, none of this is really all that surprising. We're looking at increasing awareness, getting people together to collaborate, and then also going back to that economic sustainability piece. Okay, so in terms of the geographical focus of the association, what we see really is that the majority of people think it should be bigger than Denver, based on these survey results. So for the rest of the people, about half said Colorado, so pretty broad in terms of the state, and then the other half said Front Range. So that lets us know that it extends beyond just the boundaries of the city of Denver. People were also asked if willing to give the zip code where the person's specific store or company was located in. So we see, interestingly, the majority of people were within a Denver zip code. And this is specific to your zip code. So a lot of people say they're in Denver, but their zip code reflects another place. But when you look at this, you can see that the majority of people are coming from a Denver zip code. And then we see a lot of Denver area places. So we don't really, besides Louisville, we don't really see, ooh, and ignore that spelling error there. It's, yeah, the I should be before the S. We don't really see that Boulder specifically is represented, or Colorado Springs. So again, this survey I don't think really went beyond Denver Central, which I think makes sense given the kind of organic process for getting at it. Okay, so also asked people, this gives you an idea where people are coming from, the 39 people who answered the survey. What was your role in the industry? And you can tell that me, being an external industry person, came up with these categories because a lot of people put themselves in other. So, in terms of other, that was anything from educators to people who were part of the manufacturing industry to, just people who couldn't put themselves in any one of those specific areas. And, some of these are kind of generic, obviously, like vendor. So people obviously felt that they fell outside of a lot of these areas. But that gives you an idea of who was responding specifically to the survey. Okay, so as you know, if you took the survey, we really tried, again, because this wasn't, the intention of this was to gain as much information as possible. We didn't want it to all be closed-ended questions. So there were a lot of opportunities for you to just give your general feedback and comments related to a lot of these questions. So I wanted to at least summarize some of the comments that came out of those open-ended places so you'd have an idea of what was said beyond the statistical or the more number-based information I gave you. The first, and again, this is going to be kind of repetitive to things I've already mentioned, but dialoguing with other groups, so other associations, people felt was very important to starting an association. And again, what came out of that was the group deciding that it was really important to invite people from those associations to come in, be part of this, talk to us about what it is that you do. That it should be, if a fashion association comes about, it should be inclusive of all aspects of the industry. And I think you can tell just from the people who showed up tonight that there are a lot of different areas of the industry represented here. So obviously a lot of people are engaged and care about this. That it should not be a tool of big business. And again, that goes back to the whole agenda idea that it's really a separate entity that looks out for all the different elements of the industry. That fashion is about all arts and about lifestyle, which I thought was a really good comment because that again gets back to the idea of inclusiveness, and that the more we work together, the stronger of an association it would be. The need for a cohesive voice. So even though the diversity is important, There's also an importance of having an association that can represent a voice for the industry collectively. Denver needs to raise standards to be taken seriously, so this issue came up that everyone in here, we all have our own standards and high standards for ourselves, but coming together as a community and raising those standards for the community is a very valuable thing to do. And then offering something new and different. So doing something that hasn't been done before, that other associations haven't tackled to differentiate themselves. Any questions about any of that information? We'll have some time for discussion here, so you can kind of reflect on what came out of this. So key takeaways. I always like to end with, what did we kind of end up with this survey information? The majority of people who took the survey believe that an association is necessary. Now again, people who are going to take a Fashion Association survey might already be interested in a fashion association, so we have to take that into consideration when we consider the sources of this. But I still think it's very valuable and important. That it should be collaborative and inclusive, which was mentioned several times. At a minimum, it should focus on the Front Range, okay, possibly Colorado as a whole. The membership dues that people are willing to pay between $50 and $100. The need to move Colorado forward in building a cohesive fashion industry. The need to help develop a sustainable economic model for members of that industry. And finally, the need to differentiate among other organizations. So I think that, and hopefully, if Ginger or Mona or Kathy, who also read all the survey results, have anything that you want to add that you don't think this covers, feel free to jump in and mention it. Okay, great. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, before we get into a discussion about the survey results, because I think it would be helpful for you all to specifically hear from the representatives we have from different fashion associations or fashion-related associations. That way, that can maybe be part of the conversation about the survey results. So after we hear from them, we'll just take some time to have an open discussion, whatever it is you're thinking, any feedback you have, questions that weren't answered that you're thinking about, just sort of a general brainstorming session.